So hello, everyone. Hope you're all enjoying Grad on Live 2022 and you're engaging with the many and varied graduate employers we have here with us today. You're also very welcome to the third presentation today, which is going to be hosted by Judy Murphy, Career Consultant at IT Carlow. In this session, Judy is going to be giving you advice on how to interview with confidence, and she will share, easy for me to say, key insights on how to develop your employability skills for success. So as with the previous two sessions, you can ask and upvote questions using the chat box below, and time permitting, we will put as many to Judy as we can at the end. But for now, I will leave you in the capable hands of Judy Murphy.
Hi there. Thanks very much, Piers, and good afternoon, everybody. And delighted to have you here today with me. So lots of questions I get asked lots of times about how am I going to interview with confidence? I'm not feeling very confident about interviewing. So today I've put together a few key points and top tip slides for everybody. So without further ado, so the top tips you need to succeed at interview are really understanding about how to get started and ultimately to be prepared. There's a huge amount of groundwork that you need to do. Probably 80% of the work you will do for an interview is going to be unseen work that you do to prepare. We'll talk about key interview skills and a little bit around competency type interviewing and strengths-based interviewing. And then as lots of video interviews are going on still, we will talk a little bit about top tips for video interviewing. And then next steps. So the next steps is if you want to, while you're listening, just make a few notes if there's anything that resonates with you or something different you're going to do the next time you interview, just to make yourself successful. So we all want to get hired. That's the whole purpose of this. So I have a question for everybody. Anybody got any summer plans at the moment? You know, are you thinking about the summer already? Or are you still at perhaps exams, final year exams, first year exams? And if you are, have you anything planned? So what's going on there? So when I was thinking about this, I was saying, if you have summer plans now, right? It could be going off with the family. It could be maybe visiting across Europe, hiking across Europe. It could be maybe someone's excitingly going to Machu Picchu this year if it's open. But, you know, maybe you're just going on a hiking trip up in the Alps, or maybe Ayia Napa is on your list. Whichever one it is, or even if it's just exams, you're going to be putting a bit of thought into it, right? And especially for exams, for this type of trip, you're definitely going to need to be prepared. And because it's important to you, you're going to put a lot of time and effort into it. You will have your passport, as it's taking, I think, about 4 months at the moment. You will have a couple of bob put away and book your flights. So you're going to be booking maybe flights early. So just to make sure that you actually get a really good deal. So interviewing is actually a lot like this. It's all about being prepared. And to do a really good interview, the starting point really is understanding the types of interviews you may be doing. So are the interviews going to be online or might they be face-to-face? You need to understand and know this. Are there going to be group or individual interviews? So there's still some phone interviews going on, not as much as there would have been maybe even 2 years ago. Now it's a lot more sort of online, and it can be a panel interview online. You still, for maybe just local part-time jobs, you may still be just doing that informal interview face-to-face or a formal interview face-to-face one-to-one. Also, there's lots of automated video interviews around now at the moment as well, and they're getting more and more popular because they're just a lot more convenient all around. And you still have perhaps an interview if you're called to do an assessment center and there's sort of a group exercise going on there. So I think this just summarizes your interview prep beautifully. Not the presentation you do, but your presentation of yourself on the day, maybe it's about 20%. It's a little bit like an otter. An otter is down in the water all the time, and just every now and again, they'll surface out of the water, make a bit of a fuss, and they're gone again. But your preparation is paramount to this. So what's the type of groundwork? What have you been doing so far? So think about what have you done to date in terms of groundwork for your interview prep. Has it worked? And here are some tips in terms of what you should do. So the best groundwork ever, lads, company research. And again and again and again, and my background is in graduate recruitment, and I would have recruited hundreds of graduates over the years into the organization. And the ones that impressed the most are the ones that did decent research on the company. And I heard a story recently where someone actually came across some letters somebody had written online, and the company was so impressed they actually hired them. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, before your interview, if you've got to the interviewers are thinking, yes, this person is capable of doing the job. So read over your CV beforehand, check out your LinkedIn profile or even the LinkedIn profiles of the interviewers, and go over the job description just before you go into the interview, maybe, you know, that morning or the day before, so that you're familiar with what you've said. It's important to anticipate possible questions. And while it might sound like an impossible task, go talk to 5 or 6 people who've been interviewed recently and ask them what questions were they asked. And I guarantee there'll be lots of similar questions that were asked. We'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, if you go to your network and you talk to your network, or that could be family, friends, you know, in college, whatever, and talk to them and see what their experience of the interview was. And most of all, I have brand here as opposed to dress for success. You know, you do need to give a really good impression when you are going to interview, be it online or be it face-to-face, because your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. You know, turning up to an interview in a tracksuit probably isn't the best idea type of thing. What does it say about how much you care about yourself even? Again, make sure that you know and understand video interview tips. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. And again, that whole, even if it's one-to-one, again, you're building rapport with the students. So do your research, look up the interviewers and see what the story is with them. Now, I often get asked, company research, what are the types of things I should look for? Well, first of all, if you don't know if there's a job or not, think about companies you might like to work for and check them out for opportunities. Just go onto their careers page, or even turn up to Grad Ireland Live, or turn up to maybe one of the Grad Ireland, or even your university job fairs, just to see who's recruiting. And you also need to check out maybe what qualifications and skills they're looking for and what process is involved. And, you know, for people in first and second year, you need to think about, start looking now at the types of qualifications that companies are going to be recruiting you maybe for an internship or a placement or final year, because now you have the time to actually swat up and try and improve your results to give you more choice. You can always Google for the size, the structure, the values, the service of the products, and get a good insight into the company. And you'll also see there, are they located in Ireland? Are they overseas? What's the culture? And you can also ask maybe alumni. So people who have been to your university or college and that they're now working in the organization. Another thing as well is any significant awards, projects or achievements. And, you know, and like GSK were on the news this morning because they're one part of it is changing their name. Any significant awards? Well, I think KPMG got Graduate Recruiter of the Year last year. So just to have a sense that you've done a little bit of a deep dive is really important. And some organizations will have a tab for investor relations, and that's where they put up any announcements. Now, need I say, if you are going for a job, you do need to be listening to the news. Once a day is fine, you know, or even picking up papers and just having a look at what's going on so you're clued into what's going on around you. So that's the research out of the way. If you ticked even half of those boxes or even most of the boxes, you're well on your way to impressing at interview. And it's not about whether you use all the information. You never know when you can slip a line or two in when you're answering your questions. I'm talking about questions again, anticipate possible questions. I want everyone out just for a second, just to think about, right? A question you've been asked at interview. Just think of one question you've been asked for interview, maybe that you didn't particularly like, but just one. And let's talk about some of the questions. The one I get told about the most is everybody, whether they are looking for a part-time job, a summer placement, graduate role, or even looking for promotion. the first question, which is like, it's sort of an icebreaker question. It isn't necessarily seen as an important question, but this is where you sell yourself. And tell me about yourself, or talk me through your career, or tell us about the past couple of years since you left school. What have you been doing? It's the same question, just to break the ice, to relax you a little bit. And the last thing students do is relax, if I'm being honest. So 3 things, and maybe a 4th. You need to look at education. Tell them about your education, your qualifications. Tell them briefly a high level of your work experience. Talk about what you're bringing to the job, your key strengths and competencies. And you can always add in why you feel you're the person to hire and you're interested in the role. And actually, this is really handy again, if you're wrapping up and you want to sort of give a last pitch saying why you should get the job. You can turn these 4 bullet points into maybe 1 sentence or 2 sentences. Other questions that may come up, you need to know what you know about them, why they should hire you, and why did you apply to them? Talk about, again, they might say, what are your key strengths or what are your weaknesses? That's just to see, are you self-aware? How would your friends describe you is another question that can come up, and it comes up sometimes as well in strengths-based interviewing. And always have a question. And where you get the best, most authentic question is when you're doing your research. Is there something that you're curious about? So if there's something you're curious about, why not ask that question? So one of the main types of interviewing that takes place is competency-based interviewing. And again, mainly because past performance is a predictor of future behavior. So if you have done something before, you're more than likely to be able to replicate it and do it again. And that's what they're looking for. You know, so it's important when you tell your stories that you use factual stories and factual examples. So competencies employers tend to look for are around communication, organization, your experience on team, leadership, time management, which speaks volumes for lots of things, and of course, problem solving. That's just a few of competencies people look for. So how do you develop them? Maybe you practice making presentations to improve your competence. Maybe you've been part of a team as part of your university work, your college work. Have you ever solved a problem? Have you ever had multiple deadlines to meet? Have you ever had to deal with a difficult customer? So in terms of, that's how you would develop your competencies. So here's what they look like. When you see on a job description, communication, teamwork, problem solving, organization, time management or planning, and teamwork and leadership, this is where you go. You talk about where you had a real life example, a specific real life example from the past that demonstrates you've experience in dealing with this. And some of the types of questions associated with that tend to start with, tell me about a time, or describe how you would do something, describe how you would deal with conflicting deadlines. Now that is an interesting one because that covers off organization, planning, and time management. So they're sort of not untypical questions that you could be asked as part of a competency-based interview. There are lots more, but what's important is that you need to use, to give yourself a good chance of doing well at the interview, you need to use the STAR model to actually answer those questions. And we'll all at this stage have heard of the STAR model. And that covers, so I think the STAR model is great for someone who can talk themselves up and down a rabbit hole. They can talk for Ireland and think that's great, but you may not be giving the information to the interviewers that they're looking for. Or maybe you're somebody who actually, you know, a person of few words. But the STAR model ensures that you actually hit all the points that you need to hit to get your example across effectively. So S is for situation, where you set the scene, the context. Task is what was required of you, what were you trying to achieve? And the most important one there is what actions did you take? Now, 2 people generally go into an interview. I go in and we go in. And if we do all the talking, we will get the job and you'll walk out without the job. So you need to think about, it's the actions that you took, that you did, are the ones that are really important. And then, of course, the result. What was the result of your actions? And if at all, you can include, say, a value like I saved time or I made more money. Brilliant. And again, just to reiterate, one specific factual example each time to tell your story to support your answer. Now, here is just an example, just to show you, for example, leadership, or it could be tweet for another competency. So you're giving them the situation because the interviewers have no idea of the context. You then give them what the task was. You can read this. I'm not going to read it out. You then give them what the task was and give them a little bit of detail. And then you talk about what did you decide to do, right? And this person is saying they decided to take the initiative. They learned skills in a previous job. They ran some training sessions and they shared with the rest of the staff. So it's brilliant. And then everyone was excited as we climbed up the ladder for the cards. And the end result was, okay, of this work. Now, sometimes an interviewer might say to you, well, what would you do differently the next time? And sometimes we tend to go into, oh, I don't think I do anything really. But they're looking for an insight into how you think and do you learn from when you do something. So that's important. Again, this is just a reminder, and I've said this already about the specific example. So strengths-based interview type questions are slightly different, but sometimes having examples, again, can really help. So it's when they want to know is when you're in flow, when you're at your best. They're trying to get you to talk about something that energizes you, which could be a project you've been involved in or some volunteering that you've been involved in. You know, now the only health warning I'd give here is when someone says, how would your close friends describe you? Not a good idea to say first into the pub and last out of the party. Okay, so, you know, what your friends come to you for? Do they come to you because they can confide in you, because, you know, you're a great organizer, that type of thing? What do they actually come to you for? So they're the types of that's just a small selection of the types of questions you could be asked at a strengths-based interview, including what are you good at? And the one thing I would say, the more you practice, and anybody who's in fourth year who's done a number of interviews over the years will know you absolutely improve. The more you practice, the better you get. And that's the way with anything you do. Where people can go wrong is they're not reading emails that are coming in to their inbox, and they might be missing a call to interview. When they do open the email, they're not reading the whole thing, and there could be a really critical line at the very last end of the page. So read them all. You don't give yourself enough time to prepare, or even on the day. Don't lie. Not a good thing, really. And then, of course, go easy on how you present yourself, especially if it is a face-to-face interview. You know, probably a good idea to have a shower and have clean clothes. It's only a minor detail, but and again, make sure you read all the instructions carefully. Some letters go out inviting people to assessment centres, but actually it's just an interview. So read it properly. And the mobile must be off. Anybody watching this who is very active on social media, clean it up. Make sure that what should be private is private, because you never know who's going to be looking at your social media or pulling it down with some algorithms. So just to keep an idea on that. And then, you know, tips for conducting a successful home video interview. Now, the one thing you need to remember about interviewers is sometimes they're actually nervous too. You never know when it's somebody's first interview. You never know whether it's the first time somebody sat next to their own manager to do an interview. So you just don't know. And what really, really helps an interviewer, and actually it helps you psychologically, is when you introduce yourself, whether it's an automated video interview, face-to-face or online or group, whatever, you smile at the camera. And that is really important. Or you smile when you meet somebody. Okay, and that relaxes them. So if you come in looking all stressed and worried, that's not going to help your case. So you want to give that excellent first impression, that first 2 or 3 seconds where you give them a big smile and make a little bit of eye contact. And you need to practice that. And just finally, just to go through your home video interview tips. So do a trial run, set up your camera, everything, set all the tech up. And it's also important that your background is tidy. Everyone in their house knows that you have an interview, and distraction free, and you can actually blur your background if tidying isn't your thing. Again, the more professional you dress, the more confident you actually feel when you're doing an interview. And there's lots of research on that. Ideally, you never sit with your back to a window because they can't see your face. And if they can't see your face, that doesn't inspire confidence in the interviewers. And as we all know, people buy confidence. You can always put a lamp by your screen, which is important. You can see there the difference between the top one and the left one and the right one. Much easier to look at the person's face, and it's really much better. Now, my top personal tip is get something that you can stick on next to the camera with a smiley face. So 2 things, it reminds you to look at the camera and it reminds you to smile. And one of the most important things about the camera, stick your laptop up in a box. The camera should be at a minimum, should be at eye level, if not slightly above. It's a much better look than actually, looking down, double chin, not a good look. So you don't see influencers really taking cameras where they're looking down. They're always looking up. Much better. So they're my video interview tips. And just finally, dealing with nerves. If you have done your research, it will help enormously. Reframe how you think about something. Don't think of it as just negative. Think about it as this is a positive thing. If this company is for you, it'll work out. If it's not, you could have had a lucky escape. Remember to breathe. Take your time and breathe for sure. When someone asks you a question, count 1, 2, pause to make sure they're finished talking, then answer the question and then stop. And finally, don't ever tell an interviewer that you are really nervous, right? If they ask you, are you nervous? Or if the person in reception while you're waiting asks you, are you nervous? Say, no, I'm actually excited. I'm looking forward to this interview. All in the spin, guys. And just preparation is the key. So taking some of these tips as I've gone through this, it's just a short presentation, but actually being prepared, as you know, increases your level of confidence for sure. And you need to take a little bit of time to plan all of this. So opportunities don't happen, you create them. So that's it from me today. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you very much for listening. So if we want to go to questions, I think we have a minute or 2 left.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for that. That was, really, really, insightful, useful, some really good practical tips there for people as well, which is always great. And it's always a good sign that when questions I can see coming in are answered as you go through the presentation. That's always really good. But there are a couple of kind of really specific ones that I want to put to you in the time that we have that I think are interesting and worth answering. And there's one here, which is, what is the best way to answer the question, what are your weaknesses?
Okay, well, it is a good question. And it really is somebody asking you to give you some insight into your own self-awareness. So I don't like the word weakness personally, and I always use it's an area for development. So you don't come clean with something that's going to be a negative for the job you're applying for. So it can be a good idea just to think back to maybe first year and think about what was a skill you didn't have in first year that actually you have developed over the time, whatever that is. So it could be something like presentation skills. It could be, if you're doing accounting, it could be maybe Excel. You hadn't used Excel before, but actually over the time you've had lots of practice and you're just brilliant at it now, So it's an area for development, something that you recognized as a gap, a skill gap, and you've actually worked on it.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said at the end there, there's kind of a little bit about spin as much as anything else.
To shoot yourself in the foot.
No, exactly. Yeah.
I know you're looking for someone that's really good in Excel. Well, actually, someone was asked in an interview last year, we're looking for someone who's really good at Excel. What are your skills like? And they went, well, I haven't really used it for 2 years. And they were in the 3rd or 4th round of the interview, and they actually had the job. but they lost it. The last fence, they lost it. So be careful what you say.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit kind of too much honesty or a little bit of kind of overconfidence as well can kind of trip you up. An interesting one here as well, which I don't see asked too often, which is what if you're a more private person and don't have any public social media accounts other than LinkedIn? Is this a red flag for interviewers?
No. I know lots of people who actually have come off social media, to be honest. But the thing about LinkedIn is the largest professional network on the planet. And it really is useful because if you are in the early stages of your career, or if you're someone who's looking for jobs, LinkedIn would maintain about 80%, 84 or 85%, in fact, of jobs that people are getting them through LinkedIn. That's the first thing. The second thing really is job search. 80%, 70 to 80% is word of mouth. So it's through your networks, and LinkedIn is a network, So you potentially increase your chances of connecting with people, and when you're connecting with people, always just say, would you mind if I connect you? Nice to meet you. So, the other social medias, I don't think it's a big issue for anyone. It's more of an issue if you're on it and you're mortified with everything that's on it.
Yeah, no, exactly, 100%. Well, look, unfortunately, that I don't have time to put any more questions to you, Judy, but you did answer 90% of them as you went through the presentation, as I said, which is always really good. So thanks so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. I'm sure everyone watching does as well. And just a quick reminder that as soon as this session ends, you'll be able to watch it on demand right here, and it'll also be uploaded to the Grad Island YouTube channel in a couple of days' time as well. Just make sure to tune into our next session. It's a panel discussion, so it's something a little bit different, and it's going to be on preparing life scientists to shape our future, and that's going to be beginning in 10 minutes at 2:10. So thank you once again, Judy, and thank you all for watching.
Okay, thanks, Piers. Bye.
Bye-bye.